Okay, that's fine. We are live now, Chair.
Okay. Welcome to members of the public or anybody else who's dialed in to this meeting. My name is Councillor Chantal Manro. I'm Chair of Ealing's Planning Committee. Welcome to this meeting. Initially, we will do apologies for absence. I don't think there are any, but we do have two substitutions. We have Councillor Aisha Reza substituting for Councillor Shabazz Ahmed and Councillor Chris Summers substituting for Councillor Josh Blacker. Members of the committee will introduce themselves when they want to speak, so members of the public will know who they are. Urgent matters, there are no urgent matters. Declarations of interest. Do I have any declarations of interest from any members of the committee for any of the items on the agenda?
No.
Okay, thank you. Minutes of the meeting on the 20th of January. Can I have somebody to please accept those minutes? I was not on that meeting, so I can't.
Agreed, Chair.
Agreed.
Okay. There was no site attendance visit because at the moment during the COVID, we're not visiting, but we are having a greater amount of CGIs and photographs, etc., through the presentation to enable us to view the application in its full entirety. We do have some speakers here, which we will call on, and the officers are here. We also have our legal representatives as well as our clerk for this meeting. So could I initially call on, where are we? Sorry.
It's Gregory Grazer.
Item, which is, it's a very large item, but it's Percival House. So I think it's Greg.
Thank you, Chair. It is, yes. I'll just get the screen up and then we can do the presentation. And thank you for forewarning everyone that it is a long presentation, Chair. And if I just advise everybody that it is a slideshow presentation followed by a fly-through, a CGI fly-through that the applicants have prepared for the site. So I'll take you to the slides, and then when that's finished through the slideshow, it's only a couple more minutes, and then we can go to questions. So thanks, Chair. This is an application at Percival House, with which I assume we will all be very well acquainted. And just as a bit of background for those who don't know the site, I need to go on the slide. Right, so site location, and just so as everyone's clear, the totality of the site comprises Percival House, the council offices, car park, and the electricity substation. And there is another view of the building in all its loveliness, and a further view from the front of the of Percival House. We'll refer to various properties on either side, but on the west side is Longfield House, on the east side Ealing Town Hall behind, and this is Aspley Court, part of Dickens Yard development. And we have the railway line, Longfield Avenue running north-south over the railway line, and this is the rear of properties in Gordon Road on the north side, and then down here in its early form, the Filmworks site. Next slide is at the rear of the site, Chair. Much the same view with the car park, etc. I'm just putting these in for context, really. I know that you're probably well acquainted, but you probably never had the advantage of this view, I must say. And moving on, views of Percival House. I think we're all acquainted with its main characteristics. And the bottom right-hand view is the entrance into Dickens Yard. Some more views of the site. The lower photographs being of Longfield House, which lies to the west, as I say, and Town Hall to the east, and then a view from the railway bridge over Longfield Avenue. looking at Percival House on the right-hand side, the old fire station on the left, just below the trees, and then Dickens Yard, Aspley House next to that. And there are some photographs, more for context. So the top left-hand photograph shows you the rear of houses in Longfield Avenue. And then an unusual photograph, one taken from when we were in Percival House, showing an upper story view. I think it's the 4th floor view over the railway bridge and the backs of properties. These were autumn time views. I wasn't able to take winter time views. And then we have some views here from Craven Avenue, which is basically terminates abruptly at its end, as you can see here. And on the left-hand side, this photograph here is number 63, it is, I think, on one side, and then 58 on the other, both of which are bounded by this substantial brick wall on either side here, which actually runs all the way along the side of the site. This is Longfield House here from the entrance off Uxbridge Road, and then this is the reverse view. So we have the substantial brick wall and a line of trees which are in the TPO just to the left of that and bounding Longfield House. And this gives you a flavour of the tree coverage on the site. So the colour notations relate to the categories of the trees. So
Greg, it's
category
don't go for there. Greg, the slideshow is running slightly behind your commentary. So if you just give it an extra moment.
Okay.
We've got the TPO tree.
I'll give it a moment.
Thank you.
Thank you for letting me know. Sorry, everyone. Right, so here we have the tree cover around the periphery of Percival House. Trees in green are the highest category A trees, and they comprise in the main the London plane trees that we have along the Longfield Avenue frontage, and then to Uxbridge Road. Another tree here, and then these blue trees actually lie just within the boundary of Longfield House. They are in a TPO, and then the trees that are coloured in grey are the lowest category trees, and then the other TPO is on the railway embankment of the Network Rail line, but is not affected by the development. Moving on. And these are photographs, a set of photographs of the trees around the periphery of the site. I won't dwell on them now. We can come back to them if we want to identify any in particular, but I imagine we're all well acquainted with them and their presence in the high street. And then an important part of the planning considerations here is the fact that the combined site of Percival House is subject to 2 allocations in the development sites development plan document. Sorry, I've just lost my mouse. Oh, here it is. Here, which is where the whole of the car park and the electricity substation is allocated for residential development. And then down below that is the Central Ealing Neighbourhood Plan site allocation, which you will see includes Percival House, but excludes the area of the electricity substation. This allocation is for residential development, and it sets certain development criteria, such as, for example, no vehicular access, where I'm showing here at the end of Longfield Road, it's only for pedestrian access, and with a scaling up of development across the site, west to east, from the low density housing here on Craven Avenue towards Dickens Yard. And then the Central Ealing Neighbourhood Plan, CNP2, which allocates the site for residential development on the site to facilitate the retention and reprovision of the council offices. And it's very important to bear in mind that the proposals within the development plan itself contemplate the removal and demolition of Percival House and its replacement with a new building. And there's no requirement to retain the building. And moving on. A bit of context for the site, but I don't think I particularly need to dwell on it, save as to note, for example, key heritage assets around the site, such as the parish church of Christ the Saviour, Ealing Town Hall, which is also a landmark heritage site. The old fire station is a locally listed building. And then we have permeability considerations in terms of the overall development plan proposal, which is to bring Craven Avenue functionally into the thoroughfare. And then background to the proposals. an extensive period of pre-application consultation over the period 2019 to 2020 between not only council officers but 2 design review panels, with 3 formal consultations with Historic England, pre-application consultations with the GLA and TfL, and the applicant's own engagement with the community, including not only a website but also numerous public meetings, 5 public exhibitions, 12,000 invitations distributed to political representatives, stakeholders, community groups, community at large, and the preparation of an environmental impact assessment. And then following the submission of the application, further engagement as part of that process with officers, with Historic England, and further community consultation. As you can see, 13,000 leaflets and links on their own website to our website. And I've lost my mouse again. There it is. Thank you. And then some context for the site. The blue star, blue star's meant to show where the site is, but you'll have to look at the word site shifted. But it shows the site at the confluence of the business quarter, the civic quarter, and Ealing Broadway in those colour codes, and all entirely within the metropolitan centre. So the site has a key locational role in the metropolitan centre of Ealing. And then heritage assets, which we'll come on to again in a while, but we have in different colours here. Conservation areas adjacent to the site, the blue being Percival House, and then this smaller map here showing wider conservation areas in the wider context, as well as listed buildings, as are highlighted here, and then with the red dots, locally listed buildings, and then we have Walpole Park to the south, Pitshanger Manor within that, and we'll come back to those as well. As part of the design development, the applicants assessed the potential for different development forms for the civic offices part of the site, and this is within the body of the report, Chair. It's just in really for information purposes to show that there's been an extensive period of assessment. And now looking at the residential alternatives massing, showing the various alternatives that were considered in terms of what the opportunities that may be presented or not, as the case may be, by the lowering of the tower element within the scheme. That was mainly as a result of comments arising in consultations and from Historic England. And so to the application layout. The scheme formed around the L shape of the site. You have the new civic offices here in the footprint of the existing Percival House building. To the rear, flanked by residential blocks. I'll deal with them in some more detail, with extensive public open space and accessibility. And then here an east-west pedestrian and cycle route between Craven Avenue and Longfield Avenue, tying up with Dickens Yard. And then the remainder of the residential development on the north side of the site, and building B4, which is the tower. And we'll come on to look at that in a minute. I'll deal with the details of parking and other aspects of the scheme as we go along, but highlights of the proposals, not only with regard to the replacement of the civic offices, but importantly, the 477 affordable and market flats being provided within the scheme, of which 226 are genuinely affordable. That constitutes 50.5% affordable housing across the scheme by habitable room, which is obviously entirely compliant with council and GLA policy for public land, and then a mixture of 251 market flats, which I'll come on to look at again in a minute. And a bit of context there again, showing the positions of the blocks on the site and the 3 main components of the site, in essence comprising the civic offices, the residential, and then held together by the substantial public space, including a new public space as well here at the adjacent to the Victoria Hall. The development is intended to be constructed in phases, and there are 3 phases of construction. The first phase is of demolition. It's for the demolition in the top left-hand corner of this image here of the front portion of Percival House, the retention of the rear portion for continued council working, followed by the next phase of construction, which is the erection of the new replacement offices and the construction of blocks B1 and B2 at the corner of Craven Avenue. And at that point as well, there would be the pedestrian and cycle and service access to that part of the site only in order to open it up to residential use. And then the third phase being the erection of the 2 blocks around the central space, and at that point then the opening up of the pedestrian way through the site in this direction, and then completed by the erection of the last 2 blocks in this corner here, and then the completion of the perimeter perambulation. Moving on. On the ground floor of the blocks, there are an array of uses, both residential and commercial, as indicated by the colour coding here. So the blue is for the residential elements, and the colour coding here, and then the yellow and white are for the commercial elements, which, as you can see, anchor the corners of units B5 and B6 on the north side here. And then within the ground floor of the new civic offices, activating the frontage there to Uxbridge Road, commercial units, with the pedestrian entrance now being wholly from Longfield Avenue. And then with regard to servicing, these are the servicing arrangements within the scheme. So there's a drop-off zone outside the entrance to the new civic offices for goods and deliveries and collections. Then there is a service access from this point here, which also serves as access to a substation, a relocated substation, and also for servicing the commercial units within the development. And then there is a further access point here for loading and unloading. And then within the scheme as well, as illustrated in this drawing in the top left-hand corner, a turning head is being provided within the site from Craven Avenue so that service vehicles entering the site can enter and leave in a forward gear, which of course they're not currently able to do. And that would apply also, for example, to refuse collection vehicles. But as you can see, the key point is that there is no physical route west-east or north-south for vehicles through the site. So just looking at this drawing for a minute, and it's a matter of interest within the overall context of the scheme is the relationship of the tall buildings within the site to other tall buildings that are currently in existence in the locality. This is the permission for the extension to the Premier Hotel, so it's not constructed, permission for the extension to Town Hall. And then we have over here the Filmworks site, and it gives some comparisons of heights between buildings, and they're in heights rather than stories, because I think at the end of the day that's a more meaningful comparator. And what we see here is that the new tower on the application site would constitute the tallest building in the locality, but in context with other buildings along this frontage here, relates to other tall buildings in relation to each other and in the street scene. And then this is a massing drawing. So at the moment what we have here is the massing from the back of the site. This is the railway line, this is Gordon Road. So we have the rear of the site, and what we've shown here is in relation to Dickens Yard, the massing of the development as proposed with the tower, and then the taller blocks in relation to other development in the locality. And then moving along, we have the tree works that are proposed, because it will be necessary to trim back the street trees on Uxbridge Road, and also the lime trees on the boundary with Longfield House. Extensive new tree planting, I'll come on to that shortly. And then within the scheme, a novel solution to improving rainwater supply to trees is 3 attenuation tanks to be provided within the site, and they effectively act like cisterns, one here to Uxbridge Road, so that they will actually feed rainwater directly to existing and new trees within the scheme to promote their long-term life expectancy. This is the materiality and elevations to the new civic offices using a combination of materials. We're talking stone here, stone and brick in these elevations here, and the choice of colours and materials are intended to evoke the civic pride with the town hall opposite. So it's unashamedly drawing from on that theme, so that the buildings sit with each other and complement each other. And then there is green metal clad aluminium clad fins, which will be on this facade here, facing onto Longfield Avenue in the new entrance. And then the facade here will be in bronze, so they contrast with each other. So that's the view from Uxbridge Road. This is the view from Longfield Avenue. This view here is the one that you would be able to see from within the public realm. And then this view faces onto Longfield Avenue, to Longfield House. And then with regard to the breakdown of floor space, so on the ground floor, I need to emphasise here, there is level access at street level to the whole of the scheme. So there is no plinth for the building to stand on. It's completely level and at street level as well. So there's complete continuity, and not only in terms of access at ground floor level, but also the relationship between the site and the wider area. So at ground floor, we have the main entrance, customer services and commercial units here. And then on the first floor, we have the new, excuse me, carried away there, the relocated public library with council office working, and then the upper floors with council office working, and then the roof space with plant on it. The key component of the library here is that it will have open views towards Victoria House, so there will be plain views of the town hall. And then this is a visualisation. You'll be able to see this later in the slideshow. And then there are some more visualisations here of the scheme with the tower in the background of Town Hall, the new civic office building, its relationship in street scene terms, and the extent and the maintenance of the opening up and the effect of the ground floor level of the uses, bringing the commercial uses wholly into the public realm. And then, so we turn next to look at the residential components. This is one of those impossible planning views from the south of the site, but it's just to flag up the next part of the consideration, which relates to the commercial activity. So we have in light blue here the commercial uses, entrances to the residential parts of the site as well. So there's also activity along Longfield Avenue, activating the site, small commercial unit in here, and then the rest of this is a residential street, as it were, and then the commercial units here with entrance to the public realm, and then the public accessibility through the site. And then with regard to the residential element of the scheme, the key points to take away from this is the fact that 99% of the residential units within the scheme are dual or triple aspect, and none, including any of the single aspect units, are north facing. There are in fact only 6 single aspect properties, and they're highlighted here. They face south. Triple aspect are here, and that applies across the tenures, so it's not exclusive to one tenure or another. And then on to the dwelling mix, which is also in the report, Chair. So the only table that is not currently in there, which I just want to highlight, relates to the change in the affordable mix, moving towards DMR as opposed to LAR, which had been part of the original proposals. So LR, London Living Rent. So we still have London affordable rent units within the scheme, and then we have discount market rent units within the scheme. And there are some comparators here in terms of rental levels, Chair, to demonstrate how we are well within affordable rents, and you can see the numbers there. We can come back to that later if we need to. And then these are floor plans of the units, market and affordable flats on the left-hand side, and then 2- and 3-bed flats, and all 3-bedders, I should point out, are affordable units, and all 2-bedders that are affordable are considered by a housing team 2-bed 4-person to be ideal family accommodation in this location. So they are, our housing team consider that there is the good standard of family housing within the scheme. And then these are some of the principal views at levels here through the site. So this is a view along Longfield Avenue with the flank of the civic offices along to the tower. So this is the Filmworks site here on Uxbridge Road. And then just for comparison below here, the drawing continues showing the extent of the railway cut, and then properties in Gordon Road beyond. Then this is a view with, these are the ends of houses in Craven Avenue here to the west, with the development scaling down, which is a requirement of EL7 policy in relation to the overall approach to development, and then the flow of development through the site, which maintains a good sky view through the development in both directions, so that there isn't an undue massing or filling of the view. And then this is a view that would be had from properties in Gordon Road. They're backs of the properties looking towards the site, so we're looking across the railway line here, with the properties scaling down to Craven and then up to the residential tower on the west side here. And then likewise, these are views. This is the views towards Longfield House, and at this end here, the view towards Craven Avenue. And then some elevational views. These are the units 5 and 6 that face into the site, and they have a change in colourways. They have green terracotta. I'll come on to materiality in just a minute. In fact, here it is. So the external materials, we're looking at a palette of precast concrete, terracotta in green and in beige for the tower, brick, and then white brick and patterned brickwork, with the only metal cladding of any sort being within the upper side of the unit here. So we're using, emphasising the use of natural materials through the scheme to evoke that residential character. And then within the tower block itself, substitution following consultation with Historic England of the red terracotta for the beige terracotta, which is here. And then these colourways here are of the materials themselves. And then that sort of emphasises the public realm and accessibility, which we've already looked at. And then the public realm space, so we're having extensive new tree planting, as I previously indicated, a substantial new public thoroughfare and accessibility zone with the plaza in front of the civic offices. And then there is a roof amenity space, and then the provision of PV. And then ground floor child play space at this point here, and these are the locations which are obviously entirely within the public realm, so there is close surveillance. And then these are some stills from the fly-through that we'll have a look at in a minute. So this is looking north through the amenity area, and this is looking east, and then this is the view from Craven Avenue. As I said, I'm just showing you them quickly now, but you'll have time to dwell on them later. And then this is the new Civic Plaza viewed from Longfield Avenue. This is Victoria Hall here, and how the space melds in with the local scene, creating a unity of that space between the two. And then the public library element is within here, and the picture window on this side here. And then the more views of the same space. This is quite an interesting view here because it gives the juxtaposition of the new civic offices at ground level with the town hall, which sits up on its plinth and gives it that grandeur and gravitas that it should have as the primary building within the group, which it will retain. And then this shows the plaza area at the entrance to the new civic offices, and then seating. And then this is the general view around Longfield Avenue. There's some more views of the same in a different direction. And then the basement area, which combines the relocated electricity substation from its current position at the top of the site, and then basement storage, including library storage, cycle parking for the council offices, and then in this area here, cycle parking for the residential part of the cycle park residential, and then the parking, which is primarily blue badge, with only 3 operational spaces retained for necessary council functions such as rapid response. And then the access to these areas is from 2 car lifts here onto Longfield Avenue and a cycle lift at that point there. And then likewise access to the cycle parking, the primary access to the cycle parking for the council offices is actually directly onto onto Longfield Avenue, although there is a secondary means of access, a stair access at this point here, should it be necessary. And then looking at the key aspects of the proposals, there were three views which Heritage England was exercised by in the extensive consultation that we've carried out with them, and they've been consulted at every turn in relation to these. So the first view is from the Saviour Church along Broadway here, and that's the position of the block within that scheme, and the considered view of Historic England. It was judged to be relatively low level of less than substantial harm. Then the second view, which was really drawn in with the same one in relation to general impact on Ealing Town Centre conservation area, again judged to be a relatively low level of less than substantial harm. And then the only view that really exercised Historic England at the end was the view, an oblique view, because the actual primary view across the pond is towards the rear of Pitts Hangers. That was the intended view. So this is, as it were, a secondary view that's dealt with in the evidence, but it says that there is a high degree of less than substantial harm. I think it's important to note, Chair, in particular, that at no point in any of the engagement with Historic England has there been any sense or written objection to the proposals. It announces no more than concerns. And then wider views have also been assessed, and these were undertaken as part of the consultation with Historic England as well. And all of the wider views and the verified views were actually addressed on site, walking around the site with Historic England officer, and were judged within the overall context as part of the scheme development. They were fully engaged in that process, as indeed was the design review panel. These are views, these are verified wireline views. What that means is that they are accurate and dependable. I am aware, Chair, that some criticism has been raised about some of the viewpoints of these schemes because they tend to occur where trees are. That's unavoidable, but what it clearly just shows you is if you walk a few yards on or cross the road, whatever the case may be, you would see that development, but they simply indicate the fact that in some views there would be tree screening. And then this gives a sense of the separation between neighbouring properties and adjacencies to the site. This dimension with Longfield House measures at 17 metres, but in fact would be 18 metres as part of our normal standard, as would be with Astley House here. We have separation distances of 51 and 73 metres to Gordon Road, and then a wider separation distance with Town Hall, although that's not a residential amenity matter. And then daylight and sunlight impacts. Now these are extracts from the document which was submitted by the applicant and was tested by the council's appointed specialist daylight and sunlight consultants. And just for information, what they did initially was to assess what were considered to be the residential receptors, which are coloured in green. In other words, following a computer analysis, those properties that might be affected by the development. They then carried out an extensive analysis as to which ones they are. And this has been verified by our independent consultants as to be those properties that would be most likely to be affected by the development. But then having taken detailed consideration of the analysis within that process, it was judged that Longfield House and Astley House would be the sites most likely to be materially affected by the development. And there's a quotation there from their report. We can come back to that if we need to, but the key point to take away from that is that whilst they were considered to be significant impacts, that arises in the main because of the fact that the rear portion of the site is currently open, which is generally unusual in a London situation, and therefore these developments have a level of light that would be different, for example, if one was looking at more tightly or more compacted areas elsewhere on the site. But nevertheless, in terms of those impacts, no more than one might expect to see in a large-scale development in London. And then moving along, Chair, the public benefits of the development which are listed in the committee report. These are the benefits which are balanced with the less than substantial harm, to ascertain if there are factors which weigh in favour of the application, and they run to 12 items, and they're listed in the report. First of all is the regeneration of this policy allocated site to provide new dwellings, civic offices in this highly sustainable location. 50% affordable housing by habitable room, a mix of genuinely affordable properties, including discount market rent, which would be held as such in perpetuity, accessible and adaptable new homes, replacement civic offices with a high quality, energy efficient development, and including the reallocation of community uses, and importantly, the return of the library, the public library to the civic offices, new business floor space, and considerable new job creation, both within those units and within commercial units. Significant improvements to air quality and environmental quality from a car-free development, Chair, which is obviously important given the traffic generation in the area generally. Any development which can drive down car attractions to a site, and we shouldn't forget the fact there's 120 car spaces capacity within the existing Percival House, so we are significantly and substantially reducing that car traffic generation. Significant new public realm and public accessibility, and cycle-friendly access, and then publicly accessible views of Victoria Hall and the Town Hall from within the site, which was supported by the proposals. And I'm going to try and slow down a little bit here, Chair, because I realise I might still be talking ahead of myself. But at the last count this evening, we have 1,397 neighbour representations to the scheme, the majority of which are objections there in the briefing note, which I'll come to, but I've summarised the key points of concern here in terms of overdevelopment, skyline impacts, inappropriate location for tall buildings, and in particular the tower, associated sunlight and daylight impacts, loss of view, traffic generation, lack of on-site parking, inappropriate and unattractive development, pollution, the social and post-COVID concerns with tall blocks and high density development, inadequacy of community consultation, heritage impacts, lack of genuinely affordable housing. That Percival House should be retained. And then moving on to the briefing note, Chair, a couple of changes I just wanted to highlight for you, please, and that is that for clarity, the retention of affordable properties in perpetuity relates to the discount market rent. Second item is that one of the planning conditions on the maintenance of renewable energy will now become a planning obligation. With regard to the financial contributions as well, Chair, I just wanted to flag up the fact that unlike most commercial developments or other developments that we see, instead of the developer paying over 106 contributions for highway works, they are in fact doing a substantial amount of those works themselves as part of the scheme, and an estimate of those Section 278 works is it's £580,000 worth of works in relation to footway, highway improvements, new planting, and other such things. So that would normally have been within the pantheon of the 106 obligation financial contributions. And then further representations that we've received, which I've highlighted there, Chair. And I don't want to take time now, but I will flag up a concern that's been raised by Save Ealing Centre and their correspondence with the GLA with regard to the GLA's approach to the application of policy D9, and we can spend some time on that. And then we have further representations. I know Councillor Kumar is going to address the committee, but I have put her written comments into the briefing note, along with others that we've had from other correspondents. And then I've added the correspondence between the GLA and Save Ealing Centre on the tall buildings policy D9. Also correspondence that officers have had with the GLA confirming that the change to the housing tenure mix is still compliant for fast track purposes. And then amendments to some of the conditions, which I just flag up here for clarity. For example, we've made some additional conditions and changes to the wording of conditions in relation to construction, contamination, remediation, those figures in brackets are the condition numbers, temporary working arrangements, addition of a road safety audit condition, and a condition relating to lifts being operational on first occupation of any of the blocks of flats. And so, to summarise, Chair, you'll be relieved to hear. I reiterate the main components of the proposal. We have 477 new market and affordable dwellings, 50.5% of which by Haberham are going to be affordable housing, 70 London affordable rent, and 156 discount market rent retained in perpetuity as such. That's a total of 251 of the total of the development is for market flats. The replacement of the civic offices and customer services and public library, which is 4 square, with the policy requirement in neighbourhood plan policy 2. The considerable environmental improvements and employment opportunities created by the development. As I say, the policy compliance, which is 4 square with national policy guidance. The clear planning benefits in relation to the less than substantial harm, which are more than adequately overcome, and the pantheon of Section 106 contributions, Chair. So overall, a comprehensive mixed development that will positively contribute to securing and saving the long-term civic future of Ealing Centre, including as a place to live, and the planning balance supports the application. The recommendation, Chair, I'll just flag up not only a referral to the Mayor under stage 2, but obviously also to the Secretary of State, because this is a Regulation 3 development, and the Secretary of State will have a decision as to whether he wishes to exercise his legal right to call the application in or not. And so this is the end of the slideshow, Chair, and I now turn to the fly-through. So this is the view approaching from the west past Town Hall, showing the new civic offices. Once again, I emphasise this is all at level, all at street level. So this emphasises the boulevard feel of the scheme and its relationship to Victoria Hall, which, as you can see now, buildings nod respectfully to each other with the existing London plane trees on the frontage. The Undercroft entrance to the new council offices, again, entirely at level.
Greg, sorry to interrupt, but I don't think we're getting any moving images at the moment.
It's moving on my computer. Where are you stuck?
We're stuck at the first image.
Oh. Sorry, we're going to show. We're going to. I think it wasn't being shared. I think that's the problem. Just take it back to the beginning again. Right, have you got a blank screen? Can you all see that now? Is it moving? Can you see anything? Steve, can you?
We can see a picture of the town hall at dusk, I think. It's not moving.
No. Oh, we can't see. Can you just give me 1 second then, and I'll just load the slideshow, because it's playing on this computer here, but it's obviously not playing there. Can you see it now? The movie show?
Yeah, it's just changed.
Yes, it's just changed.
But
okay, can you see it running now?
Yeah, just wait for it. Just wait for it to catch up, because I think it's still buffering.
Just stop it for a minute, and we'll just pause it for a minute and wait for it to buffer.
I did buffer. Okay, just wait.
Apologies, Chair. When we get this working, it's about 2 minutes long.
Yep.
Can you see it now?
But it's okay.
It's yeah.
Is it glitching?
Yeah, it's taking its while to go its way through.
Is it working now?
No, it's still buffering, isn't it? As far as I can see.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. You've gone back to the beginning, 0.
Right. Yes, I'm just going to give it a minute and see if that helps it.
Yes.
And then we'll try and run it again. I can assure you it's worth it. So it's the way it works on dry run. Is it running now?
We can see the play on it, but at the moment it's still.
It's still, is it? Okay.
Greg, does Katie have the run through? Can she try it from her computer?
think yes, I sent it to you as well, Steve. I don't know if you're able to share your screen, but I've sent it to Katie as well.
Okay, I'll just bear with me a moment. I'll see if I can get it.
So, Greg, if you unshare your screen,
I'll close my
please.
screen. I'll say, sorry, unshare. Yeah.
Yeah. It all worked in rehearsals. Apologies, committee members.
Yes. I'm not sure what the problem is because I can see it running perfectly. So it's obviously something to do with the sharing. I think it seems to be doing the same thing to you as well, Katie.
Seems to be moving a bit faster. Oh yes, moving.
Chair, if we all close our videos, do you think it will make it faster?
Well, you should be
Yeah.
not having the video.
No, I think
it's working. It does seem to be working.
I think the file size is it's struggling with the sharing function. Chair.
No,
I think
it is
that's what
sharing
is,
now.
so,
It is moving. It is moving.
Yeah. Oh yes, it's running. Yeah. But not obviously not smoothly. But it'll just be slower.
Yeah, but it is moving.
I think it's fairly obvious. So yeah. So you're entering into the scheme here now from the civic offices, looking into the public realm, looking north towards the tower. And then looking west towards Craven Avenue. And it'll stop now and then it'll turn itself around. So now it approaches from Craven Avenue. So this is into the shared space and then the bollards which obstruct vehicular access through the site. And then the perambulation through the public access, and then you emerge into the site here. The view through that is actually towards Vickings Yard, so you can see Aspley Court there just on the left. And then looking south to the back of the civic offices, where it should finish. Indeed, it has. So that's the end of the slideshow, Chair.
Okay. Did members of the committee, are they okay with that? Or would they like to have it run through one more time?
No, we are okay. This is a clear concept, Sheeta.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Greg. Comprehensive. We have an objector,
Thank you, Chair.
Fiona Payton. Are you there, madam?
Yes.
Hi.
Sorry, I am here now. Thank you.
Right. So you have 3 minutes, madam. So when you're ready, just start.
Thank you. I'm a resident of Mattock Lane with a direct view of Percival House. I'm rejecting not just the overshadowing, loss of privacy and amenity and cumulative impact with adjacent 9-storey filmworks this development would cause me, but to the impact on the character and setting of the historic centre of Ealing and inadequacies of the project's environmental statement. My objection focuses on direct conflict with policy regarding townscape, heritage and tall buildings, where the presumption is to preserve or enhance and not cause harm. Policy indicates development height and scale should not be intrusive, dominant or overbearing from conservation areas, listed buildings and residential properties. If this 26-storey tower in the town centre is not considered dominant, then I question what the value of the policy is. In approving this application, you set a precedent that any future 26-storey development would not be deemed dominant. Secondly, direct impact on 3 conservation areas and the setting of historic listed buildings. Historic England say the height of the tower would be harmful on setting of heritage assets, dwarfing the listed town hall and unsympathetic with conservation areas, 2 of which are already at risk. Importantly, the government statutory advisors say the central London scale of development is inappropriate for the suburban, historic, smaller scale of Ealing. Thirdly, an environmental statement that is inadequate in its assessment of direct significant impacts on townscape and heritage and its cumulative impacts and assessment of alternatives. As a retired director of environmental planning and a former reviewer of environmental statement compliance and quality, I consider this document's assessment underplays the significance of townscape heritage setting and amenity and risks any consent being open to legal challenge. For example, the ES's conclusion that the development's visual impact on Walpole Park is not inherently harmful to the quality of the view and the effect is moderate in scale, neutral in impact, given it would be double the height of Dickens Yard. Similarly for Haven Green. The ES explicitly excludes impacts and views from private property, ignoring latest guidance. Alongside the 1,300 objectors, this suggests the ES substantially underestimates the significance of the proposal's visual impacts. In conclusion, Ealing Council has the opportunity to show it as a safe custodian of the historic value of Ealing, a deliverer of high-quality design in the town centre, and a promoter of good practice. Ealing Council's objectives in the local plan are to promote good quality design that is human in scale and sympathetic with the unique character of the town centre, noting a higher standard is required where setting of listed buildings is affected. This development in its current form will both fail to meet or honour the Council's adopted policies. A design similar in mass scale and height to Dickens Yard and Filmworks will be more sympathetic and in keeping with adopted policy and previous decisions, while still achieving a high density of flats, avoiding the need for the 26-storey tower. I believe the current application should be rejected as it fails to meet adopted policy. But if this is not your view, I urge you to request the developer submit further information to their legally required ES, so that your decision is based on adequate assessment of the development's significant impacts on visual amenity, heritage, and its cumulative effect. I urge the Council to reject the application. Ealing is worthy of something better, and the loss of unique town setting is something that cannot be replaced once lost. A point of clarification, Historic England's definition of less than substantial harm.
You need to wind up now. You have gone past your time, allowed a bit extra.
Means no demolition of an asset. It doesn't mean to say there is no impact. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. We have Sarah Parkinson from the applicant.
Hi.
Sarah, you'll have a little bit more time because I've allowed the objected a little bit more time. So
okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair. The proposals for your consideration tonight secures the best outcome for this council-owned site. It delivers new homes with 50% affordable delivered, a new fit-for-purpose civic centre in place of the ageing inefficient building, a new public library, new public spaces and connections for pedestrians and cyclists in place of a car park, and new flexible commercial space to support the changing town centre. Over the lifetime of this project, we've consulted extensively, holding 2 public exhibitions attended by more than 1,000 local people and supported by more than 37,000 newsletters sent to local residents and businesses. We've held more than a dozen meetings with local stakeholder groups and close neighbours, and a series of pop-up events to answer any questions members of the public may have. The delivery of affordable housing is a key benefit of the scheme. All of the affordable homes will be acquired by the council, with affordable tenures secured at levels that address local housing needs and can be protected in perpetuity. This ensures that residents from all walks of life can take advantage of the fantastic opportunity of having Ealing Broadway on their doorstep. It will also go some way to ensure that those who grow up in the local area are not frozen out of the local market, where traditional street properties sit well outside of the budget that many of them could hope to afford. For many, a new home here could be the first step on the housing ladder, or an opportunity for young families who are beginning to look for space to grow. This development will secure a new civic building that responds to the changing needs of the council. The new building will be smaller, more energy efficient and cost efficient to run, providing a new customer service centre for residents who need to access vital council services, including a new public library. These proposals are the product of an extensive design process and have been conceived through close working with Ealing Council's planning and design advisors, the Greater London Authority, the Design Review Panel, and statutory consultees, including Historic England, and specialist consultants both on design and heritage. In terms of sustainability, the proposals remove the existing car park and prioritise the recycling and reuse of construction materials, promotes biodiversity through green interventions across the site, supports reduced car dependency and sustainable travel through increased pedestrian and cycle connectivity. It will see at least a 35% reduction in carbon emissions, with the remaining carbon emissions offset by the Council's Carbon Fund to achieve net zero. And finally, in response to the concern about the changing the character of an area, I don't need to tell you how much Ealing has changed in the last 10 years. Ealing Broadway is a busy town centre at the heart of a growing borough, with rapid access to central London via a Zone 3 tube station and a new Crossrail station on the way. Ealing Borough is a history of growth and change. Ealing is a borough with a history of growth and change. It's an area that's moving quickly, not standing still. We believe that this development responds to that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. We have Councillor Seema Kumar, the Ward Councillor. Seema, are you there?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Chair.
You have 5 minutes.
Yes, thank you. I don't see the 5 minutes on my screen yet.
Yes, there it is.
Thank you. Yeah, that's fine. Thank you. Others will talk about the wider implications of these plans and whether they adhere to the adopted planning policies. For the record, I want it to be understood that, like the nearly 1,400 objectors to the planning application, I do not agree that they do. I'm going to concentrate on what this development will mean for the people in my ward, the people I am here to represent, who will live literally in the shadow of the development. The first thing is that hundreds of occupiers living nearby will experience a significant loss of daylight to their homes. Because the application documents are so difficult to understand, many of the occupiers don't even realize this. If you look up the application on the website, you're confronted with 16 highly technical volumes of a daylight impact study that is impossible for ordinary people to understand. Though claiming to be objective, this has obviously been written to support the case. It says that 35 properties are, in their words, relevant for assessment, but this includes 8 blocks of flats, a number of homes ranging from Vernon Court, a 1960s sheltered housing block, the 1930s Longfield House to the west of the existing Percival House, and Apsley House, one of the affordable housing parts of Dickens Yard. These will be totally overwhelmed by the scale of this land. Buried in the studies, the admission homes here will experience a loss of daylight and sunlight in excess of the industry requirements. The authors claim this is acceptable to Ealing's inner area location or because of the development's metropolitan town centre site. This is wrong. Ealing is not an inner area like Camden or Islington. It is an historic suburban town centre, and many of the homes that will be affected are not in the town centre at all. This brings me to my second point, which is that this huge development will change forever my ward, which is characterized by residential streets full of low-rise houses interspersed by modest residential developments. The report does not consider either how such a huge scheme will impact on the conservation area as it is required to do. Gordon Road, part of the Haven Green Conservation, has been declared at risk by Historic England. It is pretty obvious to me and to so many people in my ward who objected to these plans that the development of this scale will cause real harm to the character of the area. It will dominate over existing buildings and visually overwhelm them. It is incredible to me that the local street system is not to be modified as a result of this development. The existing turning bans, strongly opposed by local residents into and out of Longfield Avenue, are to remain in place so that all traffic to the site coming or going from the North Circular is forced to reach it through the residential streets. They run completely against the policies that the council has been proclaiming in its LTN program. Instead of keeping traffic out that shouldn't be on residential streets, it is actively encouraging them back into the streets. Longfield Avenue has visitor vehicle access to Percival House. Currently, the covered disabled parking bays are well used, and the pay for parking bays along Longfield Avenue are invariably occupied. Demands on all this will surely become a recipe for chaos. Flat occupiers frequently need tradespeople to visit them, and as we have experienced recently, deliveries from online shopping is fast becoming a way of life. Driver slots are not easy, and instead they will park on spaces that are supposed to be used as set-down facilities for disabled people. If I had the time, I would also criticize, amongst other things, the inadequate provision of family housing here, the insufficient private outdoor space, and the fact that the council wants to demolish a building less than 40 years old with the embodied carbon it complains. This seems very inconsistent for a council that positions itself as leading the fight against climate change. Pre-app discussions on major planning applications play a crucial role in shaping the way development proposals emerge. The refusal to place this into the public domain means the committee will not have considerations that have led the Percival House scheme to evolve in the way it has. I would urge the committee to reject this application.
Thank you, Seema. We have the MP Rupa Huck, who also agreed can speak. You have 5 minutes, madam.
Thanks, Sheetal. Thanks, Chair. Ealing's future centre and library and municipal building has to be got right. So given the scope, scale and position of this application, and the fact it was dreamt up by a developer pre-COVID and now begs multiple questions, this application should not be approved now, but deferred for adjustment. Take Ealing Council's 10,000 and rising housing waiting list and its own strategic housing market assessment. It insists on any future development having family housing and being affordable. But what a mistrick here. Of 477 units, just 7 are 3-bedroom. And 50% on public land, that is a bare minimum. Mayor of London projects insist on 60 as a minimum. Hammersmith and Fulham over the border have redone their cinema with housing. They've gone over 50 and they have not touched DMR, which is the bulk of this one. So that 50% has been arrived at by massaging figures because discount market rent is not considered genuinely affordable by any housing expert because it is 80% of market value. And given Ealing Broadway, high value area, that's not going to be affordable for anyone apart from the well-heeled. And so what we have in this mix, 70 of the 477 are affordable rent, which is the old council style. A disappointingly small number, 251 are for private sale, but all the indications show that they face a difficult market. We know that in the post-COVID future, we're going to have to learn to live with this. Repeated new variants, other novel coronaviruses coming, which means that flats are proving difficult to shift. I spoke to St Andrews today, who said there's a lot of them without patio space, even more so without parking. They are not selling in Ealing. We know from Dickens Yard that the price point has to be right. And we know that unlet retail space is a problem already, just yards away from this one. How many more vibrant quarters can we take? How many more hoardings and boarded up shops is good for Ealing? But we can fix this if we fix the mix now. We don't want to be another Croydon. It went bust with an overambitious town centre project full of albatrosses, unsellable. Let's fix this now. Let's ensure that we can say to our children, we did everything possible, not just conform to the bare minimum for a developer who wanted to turn a quick profit before getting out and letting us, leaving us to deal with the fallout. In 2 weeks' time, the pioneering Ealing Council Design Review Panel takes up its posts. They've been selected as expert architects to oversee all future developments. Why don't we give this to them as the first project to sink their teeth into? They could add safeguards into the process. For example, we don't know about fire escapes here. There should be 2 sets of staircases in every building from now on, so that the fire brigade can get in and that any resident has two ways, left or right, if the building catches flames. The 1,400 objections as well could be neutralised with more consultation. People don't just want 2 boards outside Tesco's for 2 weekends and a website. So let's build in, let's take people with us, because again, we are not legally obliged to listen to those 1,400 people, but surely with the future of our town centre, we're only going to get one chance to radically remodel it. Let's take them with us with more consultation. Let us learn from the mistakes of Croydon, of LTNs. People feel these things have been smuggled in under the guise of COVID. So let's do it properly. Let's not take these decisions in haste. This is an important one. Let's learn from the mistakes of Grenfell, of Dickens Yard. That was a previous administration. But again, unlet shops, too expensive housing. We don't want something that dwarfs our historic town centre and detracts from it. So let us proceed with the DRP in a spirit of transparency and accountability, with their blessing. After all, if they are taking a bit of Ealing's sky with so many question marks, the library, there's no detail over that. The fire escapes, all these things, the housing mix that is so not suited to housing need. If they are taking a bit of Ealing's sky, surely the least that we can ask for is a bit more detail in a post-COVID future as we learn to live with this virus. This thing was created at the wrong time, and a lazy developer who doesn't want to redo the application shouldn't be got off the hook. Let's give them more time and let's get this right.
Thank you very much. Just good timing. Greg, can I come back to you, Greg, because there's some issues being raised. Do you want to cover any of the issues raised before we go to questions from the committee?
I would just like to clarify a couple of points, Chair, if I might, with regards to the speakers, as from the notes that I took. I would point out that with regards to the comments of Fiona Payton in relation to the environmental statement, that was thoroughly considered by the council, including in relation to heritage matters. And notwithstanding the applicant's submissions within that document, they have nevertheless been independently assessed with regard to the impacts of developments on heritage assets, both by Historic England and by the council's appointed independent consultants, Baxter's. So within our overall approach to the application, we have followed the line taken by Historic England and as endorsed by our independent consultants, and not that line taken by the applicants in their submission, which they're entitled to take, but we're not bound to go with it. A key point a couple of points I'd like to take up that Councillor Kumar raised. And first of all, and I'm sorry that there was members of the public found the volume of documents daunting, and had that been made known to me, then we would have asked the applicants to make sure that they were more user-friendly. We are always open to that consideration. But that aside, with regards to impacts of daylight and sunlight, they have been separately assessed by, again, an independent consultant employed by the Council EB7, who are well versed in considering these matters, and it was the reason why they were asked to assess the application. And their report is in fact appended to the officer's report to this application, as is Baxter's. And their overall conclusion is that that the daylight sunlight report submitted is fit for purpose, that it does address the relevant properties that are affected, and that it fairly acknowledges that there will be significant adverse impacts upon those, and that a balance exercise must be made. And those properties impacted are Longfield House and Astley Court. So I'm not suggesting in any way that it's been brushed over. I would also want to make a general point that Councillor Kumar raised, which is a fair one with regard to Haven Green Conservation Area being at risk, because one of the key components of the reason why it is an at-risk conservation area is in fact as a result of the amount of traffic that it has to contend with. Now, of course, this is a car-free development. It will involve a very significant reduction in car parking within the scheme, and as a consequence of which it will of itself therefore reduce the amount of traffic stress within the overall area. I'd see Dave Baptiste is just coming online, Chair, and I don't know whether Dave listened to Dr. Huck's representations with regard to the affordable housing offer. Can I just check with you that you did, Dave? Because if you did, then I'll defer to you on the housing offer.
Can you hear me?
Dave?
Yes. Hi, David.
I
Have
can
you just
hear you.
joined
Oh,
us?
great.
Or did you hear?
Yes.
Did you hear the?
I heard in part. I was
Okay.
moving
so
computers.
raised the issue of 3-bedroom and affordable housing and what our needs are. So really, we would like some sort of input from you around the whole affordable housing offer on this development.
Yes.
Chair, if I might, what I'd like to do is share the screen from the slides which show the residential density and dwelling mix, and then Dave can speak to that. And then I think that will help everyone with regards to the
and then Greg, I still need you to sort out some of the other issues like the fire safety, because that's important.
No, sorry, Chair. Can I just get this screen up to share before I deal with that issue? But can I emphasise that fire safety, the London Fire Brigade were consulted on the application and have given specific comments with regard to it. And there is a fire safety report as part of the application package and a condition of permission to have regard to that in the preparation of the scheme.
Two means of escape? Are there 2 stairwells in every block? Because that's not clear to me, and nobody has got back to me about that. And that we should insist as a minimum post Grenfell. It's not in law, but we can make that in here.
I think once you've had your say, I'm not sure you should intervening. I've asked the question, so we'll get a reply, but it's not for people to intervene anymore. You've had your say, so please just listen now. It's for the committee to debate and go through any questions, etc. Okay.
I've been looking at the plans, Chair, and there's certainly I've not been able to examine every single floor, so regrettably I can't give a complete answer to Dr. Hutt. But what I can say is that there are both duplicated lift accesses within the blocks. Now I know they're normally switched off in the event of a fire, but I see there are also staircase access points within it. But I can only, other than that, I can only draw attention to the fact that there is a requirement for the development to be fire safe, and if that required additional staircases, for example, I'm sure they would have made their requirements known early doors to the applicants, Chair.
Okay. So
I'm now sharing the page that Dave might want to talk to in relation to the housing offer generally and the affordable housing offer.
So David, would you introduce yourself so people know what position you hold within the council, so we're aware, so people who might be dialing in would know?
Okay. I'm Dave Baptiste, the head of housing development in the council, and one of my key roles is to negotiate through the affordable housing that comes through the planning system. So principally with developers, but also with housing associations, to ensure that we deliver as much affordable housing as possible, given the constraints of different schemes. So if I look at Percival House offer, the context for me at least is that this has changed and evolved over time, and I think the affordable housing offer has improved over time. through negotiation and discussions that have been taking place over at least the past 2 years, if not longer. Where we are settled now is, as you've seen, as has been explained, the offer of housing overall with 50%, slightly over 50%, if you're looking on rooms, have rooms being delivered on public land, which is a good thing. It doesn't always happen. Certainly on non-public land, it's quite a struggle to get the affordable housing on site and delivered. So from our perspective, this is a good offer, warts and all. It does have there have been some concerns raised, and they're accepted in the sense there isn't a large amount of family homes in terms of 3-bed plus, but we do count 2 beds as family homes. And then it's important to recognise that we look at the affordable housing offer across the whole piece. So that means all of the affordable in the borough. So if one scheme doesn't necessarily have a great amount of family homes, we will push harder on other schemes which may or may not be more suitable. In this case, I accept the point that 7 is a rather small amount, but I think it's a well-designed scheme, and if you like, the partly compensation for that is we are delivering family homes elsewhere. In terms of the tenure offer, there is 30% of it is social rent, London affordable rent, as it's coined at the moment, and that's welcomed. And the remainder, quite a chunk, is discount market rent. Now, there has been expressed some concern about discount market rent being 80% of the market. It's a description of what it could be. It could be up to 80% of the market. In this case, it is nowhere near that. The discount market rent is at its highest, 66% of the market, which is quite a substantial discount to the private market housing, and it's comparable with London living rent, which is a prescribed form of tenure that the GLA supports. And the reason there was a move away from London living rents was that there was a concern that those London living rents were, after 10 years, would become a sale opportunity. So if a resident didn't move out or purchase that home, then after 10 years, that would cease to be affordable housing as we know it. So these are now held in perpetuity, so someone could rent at an affordable rent and stay in this for some time. And I think it's been flagged up. It's not just about percentages. I fully accept that. But I'm just making the point that if it was 80%, those rents would be significantly higher. These rents are comparable with what are known as social rents, London living rents, not social rents, sorry, I correct myself, London living rents. So just to call them out, for 1 bed, in terms of weekly amounts, 234.62 a week, 2 bed, £304 a week. And if anyone did their own research and looked in the market, you wouldn't find rents of this order. And we have a number of schemes across the council where these rents are certainly comparable with tenure, which are considered by the GLA as affordable housing. Maybe I should stop there for now, Chair.
Okay. Can I move now to members of the committee? Can you indicate if you have any questions or queries initially? If you stop sharing the screen, Greg. Okay, I've had 3 hands that I could see straight away and they've just disappeared. Oh, I think that was, oh yeah, no, I've got it. I'll go from the top. Councillor Praveen Anand, Councillor Anthony Young, Councillor Simon Woodruff, and Councillor Chris Summers. So can you go in that order? Councillor Anand?
Thank you, Chair. I would just like to go over a few things in the report, if possible. Firstly, it's just more clarity from the officers. With regards to the light impact of Longfield House, have we actually mitigated these light impacts? Have we made any attempts towards the impact on that? I understand in the report it said that we are assuming that was open land and now it's going to be developed and land has to be developed. But have we made any scopes for mitigation here? Then on Craven Avenue, 63 and 58, is there any light impacts there as well that we could perhaps mitigate? And with regards to just staying on Craven Avenue for a moment, I just needed to clarify, is there going to be new vehicle access, or in the walkthrough video, I noticed that there were some bollards preventing that access. So just clarity there, please. And then I go to the trees. The trees that are actually the mature trees, I understood that they're going to be trimmed. So we're not going to lose any mature trees. Clarity again there, Chair, please.
Okay.
I still have a few more. Do you want me to stop here or should I?
Yeah, just stop here. Let me go through some of the others. You can come back in. Councillor Young?
Yes, my first question was to do with the closeness of neighbouring properties. There was a screenshot which I couldn't read the figures on. How close will the development be to the properties in Dickens Yard, Apsley House?
Okay, that's one. All right, I'll take a couple more and then I'll come back to another round. Councillor Rice?
Thank you, Chair. So I've just got a number of questions on here. Because one thing that did stand out is a number of studios and one bedrooms, the number of that were private. And so one thing I'd just like some clarity on is how we're going to be able to prevent those properties from being taken up by, let's say, private investors or even people from abroad. I know that this is a concern that's come up because it does seem a little bit difficult to imagine too many single people perhaps being able to buy those properties actually as ordinary people who live in Ealing. So I'd just like to just get some clarity how we're going to protect that from happening. Also, I'm concerned about the lack of staff parking for our council staff. I'm all for car-free developments and people using public transport in order to travel to work. Although, I mean, I do know from my experience of as a councillor, I know it's like the council officers will need to actually drive around the borough in order to fulfil certain tasks. And I have actually sat in the back seat with council officers as we've gone to visit somewhere, a couple of places in Southall in the afternoon, just to see see places there that people were living in. So I know that it can be important. So we do need to actually have some kind of leeway on that one. Also, I'm concerned about the retail. I mean, this is a time, as people have said, that we have got more online shopping going on. It's also a time that we are looking at perhaps new development for our high street. I know there are some people looking at maybe even some shop fronts becoming residential because of the fact that that the retail doesn't really necessarily have the kind of future as we would have liked. Certainly, there's been a lot of issues going on with Arcadia and a few other companies, Debenhams, for example, where there are changes in the marketplace on that front. There's another point as well. I know there's been a lot of talk about the carbon issue in terms of demolishing Percival House. Now, what would concern me is how much can we actually do to recycle the demolished materials, because that's an environmental concern. Or is a building which isn't actually all that old just going to go to waste, or can we actually recycle those materials? And just kind of one slightly more kind of trivial point is there's a picture on page 36 of 230 where it just looks like the trees are extremely close to the building, and I just wonder just how close they really are, because it actually looks like the branches are touching the windows, which I'm not too sure if that's really going to be workable or not. But I mean, I'd just be interested to see if that's something that we can make sure that the trees aren't touching the windows, because all too easily, if you're going to have an overhang with lots of windows, the trees are touching them, it's going to become quite unworkable quite quickly. Thank you.
Okay, Chris, can I come back to you in the second round? I think we've done 3. So can I go to Greg or Steve to just pick up some of these issues?
Sorry, Chair, I'll do my best to answer the
I think we'll keep it in like in 3s, because there was a lot of questions raised in one.
But I'm grateful to everyone anyway. So if I start, please, with Councillor Anand and his concern with regard to impacts on Longfield House. That was an issue that was considered right at the outset with regard to the proposals, and it was a reason why the units were laid out in the way that they are, in order to maximise the separation distance between properties. In fact, the development is 18 metres away, flank to flank. But with regard to sunlight and daylight impacts, the issue with Longfield House, regrettably, is largely due to the fact that the way that the flats are arranged internally in Longfield House, being of a certain age, that they already have a less than modern standard of internal lighting within them. So they start from a difficult position. But when one actually compares the position at the moment of Percival House with Longfield House, there are opportunities for more opening up of the space between the blocks. But I would have to say, in short, we did what we could to mitigate those impacts, but we could not mitigate them further. With regard to Craven Avenue, Chair, and numbers 63 and 58, there is no immediate effect with regards to number 58, because that is well separated from the rest of the site. With regard to number 63, which sits adjacent to block 1, the development scales up so that it's actually 3 stories on the boundary between the two, and the juxtaposition of the two is such that it is not a sensitive receptor with regard to the effects of the new development. Councillor Anand referred to bollards at the end of Craven Avenue. Those bollards are to prevent drive-through vehicular access through the site. But as I said in my presentation, there is an area now within the site which is effectively a turning head to allow service and delivery vehicles to turn within it, but they are not able to drive through the site from one side or the other. So no one can cut through to Longfield Avenue, for example. And with regard to trees, only one tree is to be felled, which is actually existing adjacent to the site, and then there's some small plane trees. And if I can refer, Chair, to page 38 of the report, which has a plan of trees to be retained and felled. The ones in red are the ones that would be felled, but they would also be replaced with new tree planting along the Uxbridge Road frontage. And then others on the periphery would also be replaced with new trees. There is in the briefing note, Chair, there is a reference to the fact that the plan shows a tree being felled to the north boundary of the site, but that's not actually the case. It's just an error on the plan. And I think that should deal with the point. So there's only one tree outside of the site, and established tree, 4 young trees along the Uxbridge Road, which are going to be replaced. Councillor Young asked what the different distance is between the blocks and Dickens Yard blocks, which would be the closest ones at Astley House. And the answer to that is they will be 18 metres flank to flank, which is, of course, our normal minimum requirement. Councillor Rice asked about what we might do about the sale of private studio and 1-bed flats to investors or abroad. And the short answer, Chair, is it's not a planning matter. We can't intervene in the housing market in that way. And if a landowner chooses to sell his property to someone somewhere else, we cannot regulate that. But what we can, of course, regulate is the affordable housing and make it Ealing residents first and retained as such in perpetuity, which is really our key objective. Of the area where we can intervene, we are intervening positively to ensure that Ealing people get somewhere to live first and get to keep those in perpetuity. Councillor Rice also referred to the lack of council staff parking. But of course, that's a primary objective of the council going forward, and it was part of the Future of Percival House Cabinet report back in 2015 as to what the council's imperatives would be, and the new ways of working pre-COVID were in fact to encourage staff to work from home, and staff have all been provided with computers and the facilities to work from home, and in order to do that. So the intention always was that long term it would be a car-free development. Any staff who have no alternative but to travel to work, where there's blue badge parking within the scheme in the basement, and those able persons who are able to can of course purchase a ticket to park in Springbridge car park, which is a council-owned car park on a daily basis. So there is available parking elsewhere. Councillor Rice's other point with regard to the loss of retail floor space, well, of course, part of the one of the objectives of the scheme is to encourage the introduction of commercial workspace and employment space within the scheme, rather than simply as retail floor space. And with the new use classes order, Chair, the new very flexible Class C provides for a very, very wide range of uses, including business use classes within that. So there's complete flexibility as to how the units might be let. And then with regard to Councillor Rice's last point about the recycling of Percival House, I think we need to come back to the key policy imperative, which is to secure an efficient and effective replacement of the existing Percival House building. It goes back to the council's decision in 2015 to replace it. The building is not fit for purpose. It's not fit for the 21st century. And it's not fit for a carbon-free future. The new building is designed specifically for that purpose and will be considerably more efficient. And it would not be an efficient use of the site, therefore, to keep this decaying building with the cost of having to maintain it versus having a high quality replacement building in the long term. So that's, I think, answers the questions that I noted.
Okay, so I'll take the next three people will be Councillor Chris Summers, Councillor Aisha Razor, and Councillor Simon Woodruff. So, Chris, would you please ask your question?
Yeah, I've got three short questions. Firstly, the consultation, the public meetings, can I just check that they were, I mean, obviously we had COVID hit last year, so I'm just wondering how you managed to have public meetings with COVID, and were certain people unable to come because of that? I just wondered whether the consultation process had been thorough. Also, on the subject of COVID, several, I think the objector and also the Rupert Huck mentioned, the nowadays where people are worried about being in close proximity, but I'm asking for clarification. I'm pretty sure that there's been no change in the planning guidance. Maybe in the future that will be brought into account, but we cannot rule on. We have to go on the planning rules, and COVID hasn't been factored into it, or the social distancing. Can I get some clarification on that, or has there been some guidance on dealing with that? And lastly, more a point than a question. A lot of people, we mentioned that the Percival House was built and is already, it's only 35 years old, and it's already not fit for purpose, and it's going to be demolished. Have we got any guarantees that this new building is going to have a proper, longer life than that, or are our children or whatever going to come back in 35 years time and say, oh, we need to knock it down and build a new building? I mean, considering the town hall next door is, a much older building, why it's a bit of a shame that we're already knocking it down. But yeah, just wonder if I can get some clarification.
Okay. Can I just ask people who are not speaking to please turn off their cameras, because it enables less interference? Okay, next one we have is Councillor Razor.
Actually, Councillor Summers has alluded to quite a lot of the points that I would have liked to have asked, but on the COVID issue, I'm really quite confused as to why such a large scheme is coming before us at a time when we're sort of in a state of emergency almost. I get that things will eventually sort of iron out and find their equilibrium, but at the minute I'm kind of quite gobsmacked as to why we're pulling down an enormous building and deciding all of these things right now. Also, my major concern is finances, because we're already sort of not very, shall we say, comfortably off. And at the same time, we're kind of investing in this where we really don't know what the future is holding. So I'm quite concerned.
That's not a planning issue, please.
I know, but I'm framing my question within that framework, is that actually during this time, I find that it's quite the clarification on the sort of situation during COVID. I'm amazed that it hasn't been kind of worked into what we're supposed to be thinking about now. My major problem is that it's work has changed, homes have changed, so many things are changing. We're in a state of flux, and so I'm very concerned that we might be sort of going down an alley where we might not be able to turn back, particularly in time. So yeah, I would like some clarification on how much of this has been done during COVID, similarly to Councillor Summers's points. Also, Councillor Rice raised some stuff about retail. I'm very concerned about that, because we only have to look at Dickens Yard to see sort of tumbleweed flying, and are we literally building yet another one of those? So I would like to see those points answered a bit more extensively, please. And I think that's all I had. We've already heard from Dave Baptiste about the affordability thing, but again, I'm not entirely happy about the way that has been done, and the discount market rent bit irks me somewhat, and the 7 units irk me too. So I have to say there's a lot of things that are kind of worrying me about this scheme, and a bit more clarification on the COVID side of things would be great. Thank you.
And then we've got Councillor Woodruff. I'll come to you, Councillor Mahmood, next. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I think two main points. I think following from one or two things people have said, I think the whole issue about construction and demolition really is this is right in the in the town centre. I hope it's going to be monitored very, very carefully. I think Councillor Rice's point about recycling, I understood was in my ward they've actually used the buildings as for the previous demolished buildings as part of the foundations, and not been moving stuff in and out. So I think that was the sort of recycling situation. But I'd like to know that we can guarantee that the demolition construction will not be causing any issues at all. The other issue I've got about is the amenity space. I think page 86 of 121 describes it, and we seem to have a shortfall on virtually every aspect of amenity space. I know there's Walpole Park nearby, but I think somewhere it mentions things like Dean's Gardens, which is quite a long way away. And I just wonder if we really got as much amenity space as we could have. Thanks.
Okay, I'll come to, sorry, Tariq, I'll come to you in a little while because I've got another couple of hands raised. So I'll do you in the next round. So Greg, can you just cover some of the issues raised currently?
Yes, I will, Chair, because fortunately I think some of the issues are common to each other. So I may deal with them both at the same time. First of all, in relation to Councillor Summers' point about public consultation. So pre-application and pre-lockdown, the engagement was by way of public exhibition and public engagement directly with members of the public, and that was very effective. Post lockdown, the council came forward with its own revisions to its statement of community involvement and the way in which it expected developers to engage with the public in a COVID-safe way, and the applicants have engaged entirely with that and instead have used electronic means of communication, and where that wasn't available, through leafleting and directing folk to their website, as well as a way of exchanging information with them directly and answering their questions. But it's obviously not been possible to have public exhibition or engagement since lockdown. So they've had to adopt a more should we say, a home-based approach to engagement. The next, Councillor Summers' next point, that there has been no planning guidance or planning policy issued by government in relation to how housing or other developments should be developed post-COVID, and I think maybe that's probably prudent in the circumstances, because I know this is not a planning matter, but it's obviously something that touches us all. The prospect now of the success of vaccines across the community and the likelihood of being able to open up society again, I think gives us all cause for optimism. And I think we also need to bear in mind, Chair, and I think this goes to the point about why are they submitting the development now. Planning applications take some time to come forward, Chair, and to get developed, as we all know. There's often a considerable period of time between the grant of a planning permission and the digging of the first trench. And the applicants, which includes the council in this, are looking forward to the prospect of normality. So I don't see anything particularly out of step with current situation in terms of the bringing forward of this development. I think we all hope, with the best will in the world, that the vaccination and a responsible reaction by public, to say, it's not a planning matter, but nevertheless will bring the crisis back into control, and we can return to normality. So I hope that addresses the point. And I'd like to just address this point about Percival House not being fit for purpose, Chair. I mean, this was examined by Cabinet back in 2015. Work had already been done on Percival House, as I understand it, back in the 2000s in order to try and bring it up to snuff. And the decision in 2015 was that any additional monies that were put into it would end up not being a good value for money, and certainly not good value for ratepayers. So the decision to move forward with a redevelopment was clearly a prudent one in that light. And as I said, in relation to previous questions, the important point to bear in mind is that the new civic offices will be a building that is fit for purpose for the 21st century and beyond, and will move towards a carbon neutral objective, which is something that could never be achieved with the existing building without the cost of it would be prohibitive at the end of the day, and the council will ultimately end up having to do that anyway. So if I could just pick up a point that Councillor Woodruff made with regards to waste materials, and I thought maybe I misunderstood Councillor Rice, but I'll try and answer her point with regard to construction waste. And in fact, I was looking at the paperwork when the question was being asked, and in fact, the proposals are clear in terms of what has been submitted with the application, and in fact, the developer will follow the waste hierarchy by reusing and recycling materials first as the primary objective. And in fact, the estimate is that less than 1% of the total waste from this development will end up in landfill, which I think is a pretty impressive figure to keep in one's mind in terms of the sustainability of the development. And with regard to construction and demolition, that will be monitored through the construction management plan, which is within the application, and it's already a very sophisticated document in terms of how it will regulate the flow of construction traffic in and out of the site and away from sensitive residential areas. If I can pick up on the other points then with regard to, I wish I could read my own writing. Retail, I think there was a point on retail space that was made, and I don't think I can add anything more to what I said previously, which is that the new use classes order provides much greater flexibility in how commercial space can be used, and it does not necessarily have to be retail space. I think it's the activation of the frontages to Uxbridge Road, to the office quarter, and to the cultural and the civic quarter that will be a key objective of the scheme. And I don't think that we are in a situation here like they are on Dickens Yard. I mean, we must bear in mind we have a very significant attractor to this site, Chair. It's the new civic offices and the relocated library of the public and the customer services. So we will bring people to the site. And I think that may have been a downfall of the way that Dickens Yard has been. It's been a road to nowhere. And in fact, by bringing the two sites together in this way, we may well find that it will actually resurrect Dickens Yard as a spin-off from that. And then the last point that I picked up that Councillor Woodruff made was regard to the shortfall in amenity space. And yes, that is acknowledged, Councillor Woodruff, there is a shortfall in amenity space within the scheme, but your officers believe that the development as it is, notwithstanding that shortfall, nevertheless constitutes an optimal development return, especially in terms of the qualitative nature of that new space and the public realm created.
Okay, thank you. I've got two other indicators, Councillor Tariq Mahmood and Councillor Lauren Wall. Can the rest of the councillors remove their hands, please? So if you've already finished, please remove your hand so I know who wants to speak. So Councillor Mahmood.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Just many questions have already been asked and answered, but I just wanted two clarification. Sorry, Gary, I think I missed that point. So the electric substation, we are removing electric substation off the site, or it will remain within the site, one. And second clarification, I would be grateful if you let me know, is there any leisure or dining facilities within the civic wing? So that will be helpful. That's the two clarification quickly. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lauren Wall.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just clarify whether the council is actually going to retain freehold of the whole site going into the future? And also with the discounted market rent, who's actually going to guarantee that into perpetuity? Is it the council on its own? Is it Broadway Living, or is it Galliford Try as well? And how is that going to be guaranteed to be afforded? Because normally it's for a set period of 10 years or something, and I guess the finances are worked out on the sales of private properties. But in this case, it's going into perpetuity, and I guess it's going to be cross-subsidised by the retail and the private sales. But who is actually going to guarantee it? And is there any implication for council finances?
I think that on that one, some of the issues can be addressed by the officer. The other ones aren't necessarily planning issues. So I'll go to the officer. Greg, address what you can.
Thank you, Chair. I will. Councillor Mahmood, apologies if I didn't make it clear, but the electricity substation is being moved on site and will be situated in the basement area underneath the new civic offices. So it is moving within the site and will need to be moved in a timely fashion as part of the scheme. That's the first point. With regard to whether there are dining facilities within the new civic offices, Chair, I'm afraid I can't answer that question. I'm just going to refer to the floor plan as to whether there is there would be staff facilities as we currently have at Percival House. I imagine. Let me just check on the plans to make sure that I'm not misleading you.
Yeah, this private amenity space, Greg, I just got a message saying that we're fully compliant.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I'm going to. Sorry, Chair. I was going to pick that one. But I can't see. I mean, there will be kitchen and coffee making areas as usual, Chair. But I don't think there's any intention as such to actually have a dining area as such within the scheme. There will be obviously within the development itself ground floor commercial units, which will include, opportunities for coffee shop or whatever, which will be directly accessible to staff and officers and could be used as informal meeting space. And then with regard to the freehold, I can't answer that question, I'm afraid, Chair, because I don't know the answer to that question. My understanding, and this is entirely anecdotal, Chair, is that the council is giving a lease to Vistry for the residential part of the site. And
I'm sorry, Greg, I don't expect you to go there because really it's not a planning
Chair. No, I think I've said enough.
Really
Absolutely, Chair. No, I think I've said enough.
Second guess what's happening. It's got nothing to do with us at all.
No, indeed, absolutely, Chair, and thank you for that. But as I said, I was only speaking anecdotally, and I would have to defer to Dave Baptiste in the question with regard to maintaining affordable property in perpetuity. But I would direct members to the resolution, to the recommendation, which is that the affordable housing would be retained in perpetuity, and that would be the expectation. Dave can clarify that to me as well. And can I also just pick up on a point that Councillor Rice made about sales away from the area of market properties? And I do recall that it is Vistra's policy objective to sell to local people first, if they can, before they consider widening the net. But that's for the market units, not for the affordable units, Chair.
So, David,
I'll leave Dave to answer the question about.
Yeah. So, Dave, my understanding is that it would go into a Section 106 agreement. Is that your understanding?
That's correct. That's how it would be secured. So a planning requirement would ensure that those homes are kept in perpetuity, and there would be a lease granted to Broadway Living to purchase those homes and manage those homes going forward, and they're funded through Broadway Living. So we're very secure in understanding that perpetuity means perpetuity.
Okay. I think Councillor Praveen Anand, you still had a question, and Councillor Young, have you still got a question to ask?
Yes, indeed.
Okay. Tariq, have you finished with your questions, or your hand is back up again?
Okay, I have finished my question.
Okay, can you remove your hand? So Councillor Anand, and then I'll come to you, Councillor Young.
Thank you, Chair. Just to go back on the part in the chat, I'm not sure whether the public are privy to our chats. So I'd like to go over that point in more clarity with regards to the fire safety. Points were raised earlier by speakers about the whether we have 2 fire escape stairs in the public element of the building where the library and the offices are based. That clarity is still not being made, although we have in the chat said that we are compliant. I would just like that clarification, please. And then going back to the housing mix, I know it's been discussed extensively, but I still feel that I would actually ask committee to consider going back and deferring this actual development because of the housing mix. In principle, I could possibly suggest that we can agree, but the housing mix with a 3-bedroom of being just 7. Now I'll explain this because I was reading some stuff on this prior to the meeting, and I agree that we've got 2-bedroom flats that are 4 people habitable. But where does this actually help where there are mature families, where they are actually 2 opposite sex siblings? Now the government guidance is that we should see that the siblings should have that opposite sex should not really share facilities in the same room after 10 years old. So we are really not paying much attention, and this being one of our own properties, and we're not paying much attention to the family mix. So we're really not assuming, we're assuming that, and then saying so when it comes to foster parents, they won't be able to foster children because they won't have the right mix in their house, because they're going to be 2-bedroom, 4 people. So they won't be able to get an opposite sex sibling, which would be a shame if they got a boy and they can't get another child and they want to adopt somebody. With regards to if there's separations, courts actually also see that if there is not adequate space for the opposite sex, then they would perhaps even lose custody. So I really feel that the 3-bedroom emphasis of just 7, which is not even 2%, 1.5%, is substantially low for a development that we are actually pioneering. So I'm really very upset about that, and I would actually suggest that we, in principle, and I would put this as a motion to committee, that in principle we should perhaps go ahead and agree if that's how the group wants to move forward, the committee, but the mix should come back to us, and so that we can actually approve the mix, so that we actually do give a genuine sort of housing mix here. The point which was said about the 3-bedroom and it's being offered somewhere else, we're supposed to have a diverse community. We are the planning committee. We are trying, and this is a planning matter. We are actually forcing families, 3-bedroom people, families into different areas, into more, so the deprived people into another deprived area. Why can't we have a combined community where everyone can mix together? So the housing mix, I'm not supporting. Thank you, Chair. And if there is, I don't know whether that's going to be a question that can be answered, but this is what I actually.
Okay, I will come back to you in a minute. You've made a suggestion. I will need a second person to move that deferral. But for the moment, I think I just need some clarity. So I'll just get Councillor Young to ask his question, and then I'll get Dave Baptiste, our housing specialist, to come back.
Can I ask on the question of deferral?
Yeah, Councillor Summers.
I was going to suggest later on, deferral because of the housing mix. I mean, I personally would like much more London affordable rent. But
okay, so now that are you seconding Councillor Anand's proposal?
I guess I am.
Okay, so unfortunately, then Councillor Young, I have to move to a vote because there's been a deferral opposed and seconded. So
take the question first.
So can I ask the committee, Councillor Young, did I talk to you about how we vote? Are you happy with that? You know the voting system?
May I ask my questions before you move to a vote?
I can't really, because it's been put forward, so I have to take the deferral before I can go to anything else. Now the Councillor Summers is chipped in, so I have to move to that. I would not support it, but it's up to the committee to understand what they need, what they want to do. We've agreed how we're going to vote. So could I see people go to their things, and if it's yes if you want to defer and no if you don't want to, yeah? So if you want to defer, can you please go for yes? And if you don't want to defer, go for no. A raised hand is an abstention, okay? So yes would be, I'm asking for people who would like to defer this item, but a no would be a no, okay? So please everybody vote now. I'm waiting for people to vote. Aisha? Paul? Tarek? Simon, are you abstaining?
No, I've already voted. I've got my hand up. I've got my thing there.
You've done a yes.
Yeah, same here. I've already voted.
Okay.
Yeah, I have.
As well, Sheetal.
So can you, because I can't see all of them. Sorry, Katie, can you see them?
So far there are 11 votes. So we are missing a vote from, let me just check through the list. Councillor Summers.
Well, he's a yes.
Yeah, okay. But if you could just click the appropriate button, please, Councillor Summers, just so it tallies it up appropriately. And yourself as well, Chair.
I've pressed it 5 times.
So what do I need to press? I need to press a yes, or I need to press a hand up?
So if you wish to agree with deferral, then you click yes. If you don't agree, then click no. And if you want to abstain, you raise your hand.
No, I've done a no. So, okay, I can see a no on mine now.
So let me just look at the figures again. Okay, we still seem to be one missing. There's Councillor Mahmood. No, it's still only showing.
So who's missing?
So I'm just going through the list now, Chair. So it's not showing yours, but you're abstaining, are you?
No, I've said no, and I've indicated no on the thing. So it comes up on my picture as a no. So I don't quite know why you're not seeing it.
Okay, so no.
Chair,
Okay.
can I suggest we do a roll call?
Yeah.
Okay, I think we'll do it that way. Councillor Praveen Anand, do you want a deferral? Yes or no?
Deferral, please.
Councillor Gary Bastertil, yes or no?
Deferral, please.
Councillor Paul Conlon,
Yes.
for deferral, yeah?
Yes.
Councillor Tariq Mahmood,
No.
Councillor Aisha Reza,
Yes, a deferral.
Councillor Miriam Rice,
No.
Councillor Chris Summers,
Yes.
Councillor Nigel Sumner. Nigel?
Yes, Chair.
Councillor Lauren Wall,
No.
Councillor Ray Wall,
No.
Councillor Simon Woodruff,
No.
Councillor Anthony Young,
Yes.
No.
So I make that, Katie, I make that 7-5.
Yes, that's correct, Chair. That's without your vote.
So then it might, even if I vote no, it still is still carried by 7-6 then. So this item is officially deferred.
Can we make clear what we want to be?
There's nothing more you can't change the application. You have to take the application as is.
No, but can't we surely, when we're deferring it, we want to make clear what we would like to be addressed in the.
Well, I think it's very clear. It's from what you both have said. It's around the affordable housing mix.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so that we have then moved to item 2.
Chair. Before we move to item 2, Chair.
Yep.
We spent nearly 2.25 hours and we get to a deferral. I think if people want it, and nothing has changed in the papers in terms of affordable housing. So I just wish that people had asked for the deferral on this point a lot earlier. It would have saved a lot of time.
Yes, I'm aware of that, but it's up to the committee to decide how they want to and what they want to do. I mean, I wish they'd asked earlier, but it is what it is. I can only go by what the committee wants, and the committee evidently does not want to carry on with this debate, and they want to defer on the basis of affordable housing mix, and they want a better mix. I think that's what the officers will take back. Councillor Steve Barton, do you want to say anything? But I think that's the message, isn't it, from what I can take?
Well, I think it's a bit difficult to comment now because we've already taken the vote. I listened to the debate, I heard. I wanted to come in, but I'm afraid you called the vote before I could.
Well, yes, but once a motion is made, I have to move to the vote. I don't really have much choice as to how we handle these issues. Okay, we will move to item 2. Is it Joel?
Yes. Sorry, I'll just share my screen. Can you all see a black screen?
Not yet.
No. Can you now see a black screen?
Yes, we can now.
Okay. Good evening, Chair. Good evening, members. In the absence of a physical site visit, I've done a bit of a virtual site visit for you all. Some of you may remember visiting the site, however, prior to the September 2019 Planning Committee. So some of you may have memories of that, but for the benefit of all, here is a bit of a virtual site visit. I do note that previously we were having sort of issues with the video. So if that's the case, please pull me up. So here we have Roslyn Road, Bolley Lane, and across the other side of Bolley Lane, we have the TFL scheme, which was approved as part of the January Planning Committee. We're crossing the intersection here of Bolley Lane and Roslyn Road, the application site on your right, and to the left, we have the Royal Mail site. As we move further down Roslyn Road, we have the exit point here, and a Royal Mail vehicle has conveniently come out at that particular time. And further along, you have the entry point to the Royal Mail building. Behind here, you start to see the Acton Gardens development behind the Royal Mail building. And here we are at the intersection of Roslyn Road and Stirling Road, looking at the application site from the other side. Hopefully the video is still keeping up with the way I'm talking. This is the building at 29 to 39 Stirling Road as viewed from Stirling Road. So it is currently known as Network House. The camera is panning up towards Acton Gardens. To the other side, we have Innovation House, another industrial development, and on the opposite side of the road, the Acton Reuse and Recycling Centre.
Yeah, thank you.
There's just the application site again from Stirling Road. Here we're viewing the application site from Bolley Lane.
Not watched it.
Looking up towards Acton Gardens again, the TFL scheme site on your left-hand side.
Yeah, we went there last time.
And adjoining the site are some studio flats that were approved as part of a prior approval application, and you can see pocket living there slightly through the trees.
So that's it there.
Sorry, Joel, we've got a number of people that have their
could you please mute
their sound on, if they can mute, please.
Okay, do you see a presentation?
Yes, Joel.
Okay. I present to you this evening an application for full planning permission for a development consisting of 2,421 square metres of commercial space within the Class E subsection G use class and 149 residential units across 2 separate buildings on 2 separate sites. Sorry, it's not clicking across. Right. The application site is at the southeastern edge of the borough in South Acton, with the London Borough of Hounslow to the southwest and on the opposite side to the railway. The site lies within an established industrial area, which is designated as a locally significant industrial site. On the opposite side of the road is the TFL scheme, as mentioned previously, which was approved at the January Planning Committee. There are also newer residential neighbourhoods to the north of the site, namely Acton Gardens. Sorry, it's a slow response time on the change of slide. a very slow response time. The proposed commercial space will be spread across 2 buildings at 2 to 10 Roslyn Road and 29 to 39 Stirling Road. The commercial space proposed results in a net uplift in the amount of space over both the existing buildings and the existing plan commission, providing optimization of the site for employment uses.
Joel, is it possible to make them bigger, the drawings? I've just had a message. Is that possible?
Perhaps. The way I'm seeing it, it's full screen. So
no, we're not seeing. Okay, maybe I don't know. Okay, all right, that's fine. Just
I apologize. If anyone has a magnifying glass. Does that help? Doesn't help me.
It does make it bigger, but it just makes the site sort of just that bit. So I think just go along with what you're doing. I think.
Okay. I apologize for that.
No, it's not me. It's I had a message from a member of the public saying
right
bigger.
Okay. So 149 residential units are proposed with 98 flats within the Roslyn Road building and 51 flats within the Stirling Road building. The development proposes affordable housing at a rate of 38.6 by habitable room. Of this, the 10-year split proposed is 58 to 42 in favour of London affordable rent over shared ownership, which council officers and the GLA agree is a good affordable housing offering that will provide genuinely affordable homes to Ealing residents. It is also worthy to note that the proposal includes a high degree of family homes within the London affordable rent tenure, with 9 3-bedroom units proposed. The proposal has followed the agent of change principles for the co-location of commercial uses and residential uses within locally significant industrial sites. It is a view of council officers that the proposal would not materially harm the function of the industrial area, and the proposed residential uses would not be materially harmed by the existing industrial uses. A detailed assessment is provided within the committee report. However, members should be aware that Planning Committee considered the principle of development as part of the existing Planning Commission at the September 29 Planning Committee and accepted this. So the proposed building at 2 to 10 Roslyn Road would be 15 stories in height, which is an increase from the 9 stories permitted under the previous planning permission. In the context of the recently approved TFL scheme, the adjacent plot has received outline planning permission for up to 15 stories, and the proposed height is considered to be consistent with the emerging character of the area. The site's corner position at the junctions of Bollow Lane, Roslyn Road and Stirling Road provide the opportunity for the site to act as a landmark at the entrance to the industrial estate and act as a bookend for the wider block. The design is considered to be high quality by both council officers and the GLA and would provide a high degree of visual amenity and articulation to ensure the proposal would have a positive impact on the street scene. So here we're seeing a view here of the development as viewed on Bollow Lane within the context of Acton Gardens and the TFL scheme as approved. As part of the assessment of the building, a townscape analysis was provided by the applicant showing views from nearby conservation areas, listed buildings and World Heritage sites. It is the council officer's view that the proposal would present less than substantial harm to nearby heritage assets, and the benefit of the proposal which include an uplift in employment space, resulting in increased jobs and economic activity, additions to the existing housing stock, and a good amount of affordable homes. So here's a few townscape views. It might be small to see, but they have outlined the the proposal in green. A symptom of not being able to see basically means that it will have less than substantial harm. So here's from Gunnersbury Park as well. Here is the view. You can see it in here. And this is the view across the Thames, across the London Borough of Hounslows Strand on the Green Conservation Area. And here is a view from Kew Gardens, showing approved development and the TfL scheme as well. The building at 29 to 39 Stirling Road consists of a 2-storey podium which would accommodate the employment space, which has been designed to attract creatives, makers, film and TV, startups and SMEs. The residential units will be contained within 2 separate wings, which would rise from both Stirling Road and Boller Lane. The centre area and the rooftops would provide a good amount of communal amenity space. The existing planning permission proposed the 2 wings to be 9 stories in height, and the current proposal reduces the Boller Lane wing to 8 stories and increases the Stirling Road wing to 11 stories. The design of the proposal is generally consistent with what has been approved and would continue to present a high quality development that would improve the character and visual amenity of the area. The applicant has submitted a daylight sunlight assessment which showed that the proposal would not cause any significant harm to the residential amenity of the occupants of existing studio flats within Innovation House or the closest buildings within the Acton Gardens development. Both the buildings would provide for compliant internal living space and private amenity spaces. Communal amenity spaces would make good use of rooftops, and Council's landscape architect is supportive of the scheme. The proposal would provide for compliant amounts of cycle parking, and residents would be restricted from obtaining parking permits, which collectively, given the site's location close to existing public transport infrastructure, would encourage a modal shift to more sustainable forms of transportation. The applicant has also submitted a circular economy statement showing measures to reduce waste and encourage recycling and reuse in the demolition, construction and occupation stages of the development. Council's energy consultant is satisfied with the submitted energy statement with site-wide CO2 reductions of 50.6% and a Section 106 contribution with appropriate post-construction energy monitoring. Overall, it is considered the proposed development represent a high-quality development that would improve the character and appearance of the area, deliver employment space and good quality, genuinely affordable homes to Ealing residents. It is therefore recommended the application be approved, subject to completion of the Section 106 agreement and conditions. I also draw committee's attention to the briefing notes, which clarify some amendments to the report, conditions and further clarifications. Thank you.
Okay, if you stop sharing the screen. Okay, Josh, Councillor Blacker, are you there? Okay, you're the only speaker on this item, so you have 5 minutes.
Well, Chair, I'm aware you've been sitting for some time, so I shall try my best to keep it as brief as possible. I just want to run through a bit of context. I want to talk about the design of this application, the affordable housing offer, and then compare it with the previously approved scheme. I was actually on the committee in September 2019. I voted against the previous proposal for some of the reasons I'll talk about tonight, but it's worth noting some of those concerns are now more pressing. Last month, as Joel said, the committee approved an 800 home development along Boller Lane adjacent to this application site. That alone represents a 10% increase in South Acton's population and is on top of the development in Acton Gardens, which accounts for some 25% of all housing units delivered in the borough in recent years. This corner of Ealing, well, this corner of Acton, and in fact, this corner of the ward bears the brunt of development and is under great strain. To move on to the design, first, the built form is a massive uplift on the previously approved scheme, taking it from 9 to 15, an increase of 2/3. You can see from figure 2 in the report that the 15-storey element is entirely out of sync with its surroundings, and I think some of the slides shown reinforce that. Acton Gardens to one side is sensitively designed and developed in line with a master plan that's gone through extensive public engagement, and nothing on the scale proposed is in the vicinity. On the other side, this wouldn't complement the TfL scheme, but add to a sense of overbearing. The TfL scheme on one side is on one side by the railway, and this would set a precedent that would turn the other side of Boller Lane into a high-storey tunnel. The committee cannot allow this to happen, having approved substantial improvements to Boller Lane's pedestrian environment last month. The cumulative impact of the TfL scheme and this proposal will be to enclose the existing development of Acton Gardens on that corner. And I think this was clear from one of Joel's sides. The proposal then would tower over what this committee has approved, detract from the high quality architecture you have rightly demanded from these modern developments. We've spent many years ensuring that new builds respond positively to their surroundings, and approving this tonight would undo that work in this area. The affordable housing, only 38% of this application is for affordable housing, short of the 50% target we have rightly set as a borough, and for which you wanted more information on the Percival House scheme. It gets it over the mayor's viability appraisal fast track, so you may consider that it's acceptable. But I would ask you to look at what the affordable category contains. Only 58% of that 38% is genuinely affordable. The rest is shared ownership, which is an intermediate product out of reach of many local residents and totally inappropriate given the thousands of families on the housing register. If you want that put a little more starkly, just 27 of the 149 units will be genuinely affordable. Now, there is, as mentioned, a scheme already approved in September 2019. That application wasn't perfect, I voted against it, but it was approved. Now, that application had a better split of affordable housing, the same proportion overall, but more at affordable rent, 60%. There was a mix of private sale and affordable units in one of the buildings, whereas this segregates the affordable units and private units entirely. And I know the committee has been concerned about differential treatments in the past, so this is a significant change. And as mentioned, the approved scheme was more in keeping with the existing developments. It was substantially lower rather than the significant tower in this new one. So we've got greater impact on the local area for a less attractive affordable offer than you've previously approved. Now, this is not a site crying out for development. The committee should look at what is already approved on the site. It has approval. It includes employment uses. So, the briefing note reinforces that, this would be good because it has employment. Well, the approved scheme already does, so you don't need to approve another one. You need to ask whether the additional impacts of additional residents in an already well-developed part of the borough are acceptable, and ask whether the additional impacts of a more imposing design in an otherwise sensitively designed part of the borough are acceptable. We already have a scheme approved, which this committee said was good enough. I think it should be clear to you that what is before you tonight is worse. So I'm asking you, please, to reject this application and for us to proceed with the approved scheme that you approved in September 2019. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Blacker. Joel, do you have anything you want to come back on with any of the issues raised?
I'm just making note. I've sort of made note of affordable housing, employment, and the design.
Okay. So do you want to come back on those issues that were raised?
Yeah, I mean, effectively, I think the report and what I've previously said effectively justifies the design of the building, which generally keeps its general consistency in its overall design approach to the existing building, but higher. And in the context of the emerging scheme, it's very difficult to justify that's not considered to be consistent with that prevailing pattern of development in the area. It is acknowledged that currently it is a tall building when seen in the context of what is currently there. But in the future, this area will develop further, and we can expect that the character of the area will change accordingly. This site also acts as a bookend for the rest of the terrace, and there's obviously opportunities for the rest of the terrace to come forward with development as well, to repurpose that in employment space and also create new homes, genuinely affordable homes, along the wider terrace as well. In terms of the employment, Councillor Blacker mentioned that the site already has employment, and therefore we have employment. So in terms of the increase, the potential increase in the amount of employment has been notified by the commercial strategy by the applicant as currently being about 46, and with the potential to bring up to 160 employees to the site. The design of the space as well is not suited to many particular uses, and this particular space design has come forward because it offers the opportunity to be more adaptable to different types of uses within the site. And on the affordable housing, I mean, again, council officers and the GLA both think that this is a good offer. It also presents, as I've mentioned, a good amount of 3-bedroom homes within the London affordable rent tenure as well. So all I would bring into on that point is that council officers and the GLA are accepting of that.
Okay, thank you for that. I haven't seen any hands raised Does anybody got any questions? Nope. Okay. Anybody want to?
Sorry, Chair, I have a question.
Okay, Councillor Rice, go ahead.
Sorry, thank you. I think it's really the appearance of the buildings that's concerning me. I mean, I don't mean to really be insulting, but it just feels has a real feel of a kind of South Acton estate about it. I mean, when you've got the wonderful architecture, you can see it. You know, at the gardens development that we've all been approving over the years and all been really valuing, and then also see that there are other developments that we have agreed to and other developments which are in process. Just really, by comparison, it just does look like it's very much a kind of dull concrete building, which I think very quickly could actually become quite demoralising for people who really are in the area. So I'm just wondering, is it just really my eyesight that's really seeing that on the screen when I'm looking at the pictures, or is there any more kind of reassurance I can have that actually it might look more attractive than what I think it will? Thank you.
Okay, and then next is Councillor Simon Woodruff, and then Councillor Paul Conlon. Simon?
Well, yeah, I was at that committee meeting in September 2019 and thought it was just about acceptable, the height of it. But so what we get another building as a slightly higher, and then so we go back and increase this one. It's a bit like I think that is the danger that people see about tall buildings in the borough, that this is what's going to keep happening, is people are going to go slightly more, and that's what's going to happen. So I think that's of some concern. I mean, does the officer see that is a possible, well, that's a likely danger? I mean, at some point, all those other properties are going to, in between the two buildings, they're all going to be filled in with maybe even slightly bigger, you know. So how does the officer react to that?
Okay, Councillor Conlon.
Well, a very similar point, really. I mean, I think, you know, that it seems that the existing scheme that has been approved for this site is superior to this new proposal, and I think we should stick with the justification for the new proposal seems to be entirely based upon the fact that, you know, we've just given approval to a scheme the other side of Bollow Lane, and the argument is that, in the words of that famous euphemism, that now represents the new and emerging character of the area. But you know that development that has been approved the other side is in a quite distinct area with clear boundaries, one of which is Bollow Lane and the other of which is the Tube Line. And I think it's very tenuous in planning terms to argue that, you know, almost minutes after that has been approved, that immediately it becomes that the architecture in that area becomes the template for architecture, you know, outside that area and in a much wider area. So, you know, this side of Bollow Lane, maybe the other side of the Tube Line, which would be a problem for Hounslow Planning Department, I guess. I'm sure it's one they'd love to have. But basically, you know, I think the character of this area north of Bollow Lane has largely been determined, or the new and emergent character has largely been determined by the Acton Gardens development. Now, the Acton Gardens development is a pretty good development. There's a wide, you know, consensus of agreement that on the whole, it is a good and a high quality development. It's very rarely that we get, you know, any large development in Ealing that has that sort of approval. And Acton Gardens is characterized by, you know, buildings in a particular style, which are largely sort of 8 or 9 stories in height. And it manages to deliver high density and good quality. And I think that's the character of the area that, you know, other development on that side of Bollow Lane should be in keeping with, and this proposal is definitely out of keeping with that. And you know, I can't see a good reason for voting for it, to be honest, when there's a perfectly good scheme being approved already.
Okay, thank you for that. Joe, do you want to come back?
Sure. So I'll take Councillor Rice's point first on the appearance of the building. So the design approach is generally similar to what has been approved, with these different coloured brick elements, inset balconies, corner balconies. This sort of thing has sort of been dealt with before. I would add to that these sort of differentiations between the industrial spaces and the residential spaces. So there's elements of design in there that have been well thought through. And I guess on that point, there is a condition there requesting details of materials, and council officers would make sure that any materials that are selected for such a building would be of the highest quality. In terms of Councillor Woodruff's question about this, I took that as being the sort of general process. And I guess the point I would add to you is we can only assess the applications that come forward to us. In terms of this site, Council is generally working with a number of developers on developing a master plan for this area. So they're not really ad hoc developments. We are sort of looking at ways that this area can be better used and optimized, increase its employment space, increase its residential uses on the site in a highly accessible location in Acton. And in terms of the justification for the proposal, I guess there is an increase in height. With that comes an increase in the number of units, and accordingly, as a percentage, so does the affordable housing increase. So, and I guess an additional benefit to this scheme is that the employment space has been further maximised as well to get even more employment space out of the site. So actually re-providing more than is currently there.
Okay, and as for Councillor Woodruff's question around, well, okay, I think you've covered that. Anything else you want to say, Joe?
On those questions, that's the points I took down.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Are your hands still up, Paul, or you've done? Sorry, you're on mute. Okay.
Sorry, I'm on mute. I'm taking my hand down. Yeah, sorry.
Okay, and Simon? Your hand's coming off. Okay, anybody else have any questions? No, I don't hear it. What really, can you just talk me through, Joel, the 3-bedroom units? Because with the increase in the size, and there is a building next door which will be the same sort of size, will it not? Can you just talk me through the 3-bedroom units that we would get in terms of London affordable rent? That would be helpful, I think, for us to just know what's happening.
Yep. So all the 3-bedroom all the 3-bedroom units within the development would be within the London affordable rent tenure, all located within the Stirling Road building. All achieve minimum internal space standards, privacy spaces. And I'm not sure what further clarification you need on that, Chair.
The actual number of them, have you got?
9.
9. Okay, and before there were less, were they not?
I don't know off the top of my head, but yes.
Yeah, so they would have been less. And 58% of the affordable units would be at London affordable rent, yes?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay,
by
so
habitable
that's
room.
Very close to what we would ask for from any development, close to 60%. Isn't that right? Yes.
Correct.
So, Steve, do you want to add anything to the debate?
Chair, I just wanted to come back on Councillor Conlon's contribution.
Yeah.
I think he made some very interesting remarks there, very much about the changing character of different parts of the borough. And actually, many of the points he made were actually very well made. And actually, he's really put his finger on the pulse here insofar as this part of the borough is indeed changing. We've already seen, as he has said, more higher rise development, denser development on the South Acton estate. And we've now seen at the last committee the Bollow Lane development, which also includes and incorporates a number of taller elements. Obviously, what policy seeks to do is to optimise development on individual sites. That doesn't just relate to the amount of housing that we can deliver, both affordable or the overall quantum of housing, but also in terms of other uses as well. And as Joel has said, the new proposal will optimise the employment space on this site as well as increase the overall number of housing units delivered as well.
Okay, all right. So unless I've got anybody else who wants to say something, I think I'm going to move to the vote. Okay, I don't see any indication. So I'm just going to take a roll vote again, like I did before. Councillor Praveen Anand, are you in favour or against this application? For, thank you. Councillor Gary Bustertel?
Chair, Councillor Bustertel has
gone. Okay, so he's left, so he's no longer there.
Okay.
Paul, Councillor Conlon, are you for or against?
Against.
Councillor Tariq Mahmood, are you for or against?
For.
Councillor Razor, are you for or against?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Rice, are you for or against?
For.
Councillor Summers, are you for or against?
For.
Councillor Sumner, are you for or against?
Against, Chair.
Councillor Lauren Wall?
For.
Councillor Ray Wall?
For.
Councillor Simon Woodruff?
For.
Councillor Young?
Against.
Okay, so I've got 1, 2, 3 against, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and including me, 9 for. Is that correct, Katie?
Yes, Chair. So out of the 12 votes, there were 9 for and 3 against.
Okay, so this application is carried. Thank you very much for everybody for attending. We may have to have another meeting in March. Well, we will have a meeting in March, but it may be a longer meeting because we may have this application come back that's been deferred. So people should be prepared for a longer meeting. Councillor Sumner, did you want to say something? Oh, sorry. Okay.
I'm looking.
Sorry, did you want to say something, Councillor Sumner?
No, I'm fine. Thank you.
Okay, sorry, I didn't. Okay. It's just, all right. So thank you very much for attending today. I'm sorry it's been quite a long meeting and we didn't actually get much work done, but we will come back to it. Thank you and good night. And we can now go off air, Katie.